Captain Zexhai clicked his mandibles in frustration as he stared at the massive derelict ship floating in the void. The Eternal Wanderer had been drifting for over 3,000 years, its warp drive systems as dead as the civilization that built it. Now, somehow, it was their only hope of escaping the Vorthan fleet that pursued them across half the galaxy. Status report, Zexhai demanded, his four arms working frantically at the command console. The Vorthans will be here in 6 hours, reported Lieutenant Crevier, her scales shifting from blue to worried purple. Our conventional engines are damaged. We cannot outrun them. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing life support systems. The Swift Current was a good ship, but she was small and lightly armed. Against 12 Vorthan destroyers, they would last perhaps 10 minutes in open combat. What about the derelict? Asked Chief Engineer Moldrak, pointing one of his tentacles at the ancient vessel on the main screen. The energy readings suggest some systems are still functional. Zexhai's species, the Veltar, had been spacefaring for over 5,000 years. They had encountered many dead ships in their travels, but nothing like the Eternal Wanderer. The vessel was enormous, easily 10 times the size of their own ship, and built from materials they couldn't identify. Most intriguingly, it appeared to be of human construction. Humans, whispered Navigator Yilna, her 6 eyes widening. I thought they were just legends. The galaxy knew stories of humans. Ancient tales spoke of a species that appeared suddenly in the cosmic community, made contact with dozens of civilizations, then vanished just as mysteriously. Some said they had transcended to a higher plane of existence. Others believed they had been wiped out by some terrible catastrophe. Most considered them to be nothing more than space or folklore. The ship is real enough, Zexhai said grimly, and it's our only chance. Prepare a boarding party. Within an hour, a small team had crossed to the derelict vessel. The airlocks were ancient, but still functional, responding to universal docking protocols that suggested the builders had been remarkably forward-thinking in their engineering. The interior of the Eternal Wanderer was like stepping into a museum. Everything was preserved in perfect condition, as if the crew had simply vanished moments ago, rather than millennia past. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly designed for a bipedal species of considerable size. Gravity generators still functioned, providing a comfortable environment for the exploration team. Atmosphere is breathable, reported Moldrak, checking his instruments. Temperature is stable. It's as if this ship is waiting for someone to return. They found the first signs of human habitation in what appeared to be crew quarters. The rooms were sparse by most species standards, but there were personal items scattered about. Strange geometric puzzles made of colorful plastic, small figurines depicting creatures and vehicles, and books containing pictographic writing systems none of them could read. Look at this, Crevier called from across the room. She held up a small, articulated figure of what appeared to be a humanoid warrior in armor. The detail work is incredible, but why would a spacefaring species carry toys? Zexhai examined the figure closely. It was made from some kind of durable polymer, painted with remarkable precision. The warrior held a tiny weapon and wore what looked like combat gear. More intriguingly, there were dozens of similar figures throughout the room, along with various vehicles and creatures. Perhaps they were a species that valued childhood highly, suggested Yilna. Or maybe these served some cultural or religious purpose. They continued their exploration, finding more evidence of human presence throughout the ship. The engine room was their primary destination, but they were continually distracted by the abundance of small objects and personal items that seemed to have no practical purpose. There were cubes with colored squares that could be rotated and rearranged, small vehicles with wheels that still turned smoothly, and countless figurines representing everything from ancient warriors to futuristic soldiers. The engine room itself was a marvel of engineering that left even the experienced Moldrak speechless. The warp drive core was unlike anything in their technical databases. Where most species used crystalline matrices or quantum field generators, the humans had built something that looked almost organic. Curved metal surfaces flowed into each other like living tissue, and the entire assembly pulsed with a faint inner light. The power systems are in standby mode, Moldrak reported, his tentacles dancing over alien control surfaces. But I don't understand how any of this works. The theoretical principles are completely foreign to me. Can you activate it? Zexai asked urgently. Time was running short, and they needed to move soon if they hoped to escape the Vorthons. I don't know, Moldrak admitted. The control interfaces are clearly designed for human hands, and there seem to be some kind of authentication protocols in place. The system is asking for something, but I can't determine what. Frustrated, the team spread out to search for clues. The engine room was vast, with multiple levels connected by ramps and walkways that accommodated the humans' bipedal locomotion. Throughout the space, they found more evidence of human culture. Personal workstations decorated with small figurines, tool lockers containing both sophisticated instruments and simple toys, and even what appeared to be recreational areas where crew members might have relaxed during long voyages. It was Yilna who made the first breakthrough. In a small alcove near the main control station, she discovered what appeared to be a collection point for various small objects. There were dozens of the articulated figures arranged in careful formations, along with miniature vehicles and creatures. But more importantly, there were cables and connections linking many of these items to the ship's computer systems. "Captain," she called excitedly, "I think these toys might be more than decoration." Zexai hurried over to examine Yilna's discovery. The connections were subtle, almost hidden within the display arrangement, but they were definitely present. Several of the figures had small ports in their bases that connected to fiber optic cables running into the ship's network. "Fascinating," Moldrak observed, extending a tentacle to touch one of the connections. "It appears the humans integrated their personal items into the ship's operational systems. But why would they do such a thing?" Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The Vorthons had arrived early, and their sensors were already probing the derelict vessel. "We're out of time," Zexai announced grimly. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." Moldrak worked frantically at the human control interfaces, trying to decode their function through trial and error. The symbols were completely alien, but some of the controls seemed to respond to touch and gesture in intuitive ways. However, every attempt to activate the warp drive resulted in the same response: a soft chime and a holographic display showing what appeared to be an empty collection grid. "It's asking for something specific," Moldrak reported. "Some kind of collection or arrangement. But I don't understand what." Crevier had been studying the arranged figurines more closely, noting the careful way they were positioned relative to each other. "What if it's not just decoration?" she suggested. "What if these arrangements mean something to the ship's systems? You think the toys are some kind of input device?" Yilna asked skeptically. "Think about it," Crevier continued, her excitement growing. "Humans were known for their creativity and unconventional thinking. What if they designed their ship to respond to something personal and meaningful rather than sterile command codes?" It was a wild theory, but they had few alternatives. Under Zexai's direction, the team began carefully documenting the existing arrangements of figurines and trying to understand any patterns. Some groups seemed to represent different categories: warriors, vehicles, creatures, and various other archetypes. Others appeared to be arranged by color, size, or other physical characteristics. Meanwhile, the Vorthons were closing in. Their ships had taken position around the derelict, and preliminary scans indicated they were preparing boarding parties of their own. The swift current remained hidden on the far side of the ancient vessel, but that concealment wouldn't last long. "Try this arrangement," Yilna suggested, repositioning several figures according to what appeared to be a combat formation she'd observed in one of the crew quarters. The ship's computers chimed in response, and several new holographic displays activated. "Something's happening," Moldrak reported excitedly. "The warp core is showing increased activity, but it's still not enough. The system needs more input." They worked feverishly, trying different combinations and arrangements. Each successful pattern seemed to unlock new systems or increase the ship's readiness level. It became clear that the human crew had created an incredibly sophisticated interaction system based on their personal collections, turning what other species might consider mere toys into functional components of their ship's operation. The breakthrough came when Crevier noticed a small compartment she'd initially overlooked. Inside were hundreds more figurines, carefully stored and categorized. But, more importantly, there were what appeared to be instruction manuals showing various arrangements and their meanings. It's like a language, she realized. The figurines represent different concepts, and their arrangements create commands or instructions. The humans turned their entire collection into a control interface. With this understanding, they began working more systematically. The manuals were written in human script, but the diagrams were clear enough to follow. Different arrangements seemed to control different ship systems: navigation, weapons, life support, and, finally, the warp drive itself. "I think I understand now," Moldrak said, his tentacles moving rapidly as he arranged figurines according to one of the more complex diagrams. The humans didn't just build a ship. They built a companion, something that would respond to personal interaction rather than cold commands. The warp drive sequence required an elaborate arrangement involving dozens of figures representing various archetypes: explorers, guardians, teachers, and others. As each piece was positioned correctly, the ship's systems responded with increasing energy readings. The ancient vessel seemed to be waking up after its long slumber. But they weren't finished yet. The Vorthans had detected the increasing energy signatures and were accelerating their approach. Weapon systems were powering up, and it was clear they intended to destroy the derelict rather than allow it to fall into enemy hands. 30 seconds to weapons range, reported Yilna, monitoring their communications from the swift current. Zexai made a command decision. "Complete the sequence now, regardless of whether we understand it fully. We can't wait any longer." Moldrak positioned the final figurines according to the manual's diagrams. As the last piece clicked into place, the entire engine room filled with brilliant light. The warp drive core began spinning, its organic curves flowing and shifting like something alive. Energy readings spiked beyond their instrument's ability to measure. The Eternal Wanderer was coming back to life. But activation was only the beginning. As the ancient systems fully engaged, the ship's artificial intelligence began to communicate with them through the figurine interface. Holographic displays showed star maps and navigation options, but they were all presented through the lens of the collection system the humans had created. "It's incredible," Yilna whispered, watching as miniature vehicles on the display began moving to show possible escape routes. They created a ship that thinks like they do, that communicates through play and imagination rather than pure logic. The Vorthans opened fire just as the Eternal Wanderer's shields activated. The ancient vessel absorbed the incoming energy blasts without apparent damage, its protective systems far more advanced than anything the attackers possessed. But, more importantly, the warp drive was now fully operational. "Navigation is online," Moldrak reported, working with the figurine interface as if he'd been doing it for years. "The ship is asking where we want to go." Zexai thought quickly. They needed to escape, but they also needed to understand more about this incredible vessel they discovered. "Set course for the neutral zone," he decided. "Somewhere we can study this ship properly." As the Eternal Wanderer engaged its warp drive for the first time in 3,000 years, Zexai couldn't help but marvel at what they'd found. The humans hadn't just built a starship. They'd created something that reflected their species' most remarkable characteristic: the ability to find wonder and meaning in the simplest things. The toy collection that had seemed so puzzling was actually the key to everything. In typical human fashion, they'd turned play into purpose, imagination into engineering, and childhood wonder into technological marvel. As the stars stretched into lines around them, and the ancient ship carried them to safety, Zexai realized they discovered something far more valuable than just an escape route. They found evidence that the humans weren't gone after all. They were just waiting for someone to play with their toys. The Eternal Wanderer dropped out of warp space 3 days later in the Kepler neutral zone, a region of space claimed by no single government and frequented mostly by traders, smugglers, and researchers seeking privacy for their work. Captain Zexai had chosen the location carefully, knowing they would need time to study their remarkable discovery without interference. Full stop achieved, Captain, reported Navigator Yilna, her 6 eyes focused on the holographic star charts that materialized above the figurine collection interface. Even after days of use, the sight of tactical information being displayed through miniature spaceships and action figures remained surreal to the Veltar crew. The ancient human ship had proven to be far more than just a means of escape. During their journey, they had begun to understand that every system aboard the vessel was integrated with what they had initially dismissed as children's toys. The environmental controls responded to arrangements of figurines representing different climates and seasons. Navigation used miniature vehicles to plot courses and display stellar cartography. Even the food replicators seemed to operate through some kind of collection-based interface, though they hadn't yet figured out how to make it produce anything edible for non-human physiology. Chief Engineer Moldrak had spent most of the journey in the engine room, studying the warp drive's integration with the figurine control system. His tentacles moved with increasing confidence among the arranged collections, and he was beginning to develop what could only be described as an intuitive understanding of the human interface design. Captain, Moldrak's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. You need to see what I've discovered in the central computer core. Zexai made his way through corridors that still felt alien despite days of exploration. The Eternal Wanderer was massive, containing entire sections they hadn't yet investigated. The ship seemed designed not just for travel, but for long-term habitation by a large crew. Yet everywhere he looked, there were signs of the humans' unique approach to technology integration. Personal quarters contained not just sleeping areas and storage, but elaborate display cases for various collections. Workshop areas had specialized storage for thousands of small figurines, vehicles, and accessories. Even utilitarian spaces like engineering stations were decorated with carefully arranged toys that, upon closer examination, turned out to be functional interface components. The central computer core occupied a cathedral-like space at the heart of the ship. Curved walls rose 50 meters overhead, covered with what appeared to be decorative murals depicting fantastic battles between various figurine archetypes. But as Zexai entered the space, he realized the murals were actually three-dimensional displays showing the current status of the ship's various systems. Incredible, isn't it? Moldrak said, gesturing with multiple tentacles toward the central display column. The entire ship's computer system is organized around narrative structures rather than logical hierarchies. It doesn't just store data, it tells stories with it. The central column contained thousands of alcoves, each holding different figurines, vehicles, and accessories. But these weren't random collections. As Zexai studied the arrangements more closely, he began to see patterns that suggested complex organizational systems. Each group represents a different aspect of ship operations, Moldrak explained. But they're not organized by function like our systems. They're arranged by themes, stories, and relationships between characters. The humans built their computer to think like they do, in terms of narratives and personalities rather than pure logic. Lieutenant Crevier entered the chamber, her scales shifting to an excited orange color. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the ship's AI. It's been trying to communicate with us through the figurine interfaces, but we didn't understand the protocol. As if responding to her words, the central column began to glow softly. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing not data readouts or system status reports, but what appear to be scenes from human history and culture. Figurines throughout the chamber began to move, repositioning themselves to create new arrangements that told visual stories. It's showing us how the ship works, Zexai realized, watching as miniature humans interacted with scaled-down versions of the ship's systems. The AI is teaching us through demonstration and play. The holographic humans moved with fluid grace, their actions coordinated and purposeful. They showed the alien observers how different figurine arrangements could control various systems, but more than that, they demonstrated the philosophy behind the human approach to technology. Every interface was designed to be intuitive, engaging, and personally meaningful to the user. "Look at this," Yilna called from across the chamber. She had found what appeared to be a historical archive, displayed through an elaborate diorama that showed the evolution of human space travel. Miniature ships progressed from primitive rockets to sophisticated interstellar vessels, while figurines representing different human cultures and time periods interacted with each new technology. The story the diorama told was fascinating. Humans had indeed appeared suddenly in galactic civilization, but not because they were a new species. They had been developing in isolation for millennia, creating their own unique approach to technology and space travel. When they finally ventured beyond their home system, they brought with them innovations that other species had never considered. They integrated art with engineering, Moldrak observed, studying a section that showed human engineers working alongside artists and storytellers to design their ships. They refused to separate functional design from aesthetic and emotional considerations. That's why their technology feels so alien to us. The AI continued its patient instruction, showing them how the humans had faced the same challenges as other spacefaring species, but had solved them through radically different approaches. Where most civilizations developed increasingly abstract and logical interfaces for complex systems, humans had gone in the opposite direction, creating tactile, visual, and emotionally engaging methods of interaction. "It's brilliant," Crevier said, her scales now shifting through multiple colors as her excitement grew. By making their technology personally meaningful, they ensured that crew members would remain engaged and attentive during long voyages. The interface isn't just functional, it's entertaining. But the historical display revealed something else as well. The humans hadn't vanished mysteriously as galactic legend suggested. They had made a deliberate choice to explore beyond the known galaxy, venturing into regions that other species considered too dangerous or distant to investigate. The Eternal Wanderer and ships like it had been left behind as way stations, ready to assist any travelers who might need them. "They're still out there," Zexai said with growing certainty. "This ship isn't abandoned. It's a gift. The humans left it here for others to find and use." The AI seemed to confirm this interpretation, as the holographic displays shifted to show star maps of regions beyond the galactic rim. Tiny figurines representing human explorers moved along projected routes that led to distant star clusters and nebulae that appeared in no standard navigation database. Over the following hours, the crew of the Swift Current began to truly understand the scope of what they had discovered. The Eternal Wanderer wasn't just a ship. It was a repository of human knowledge and culture designed to share their unique approach to technology with anyone capable of understanding it. The figurine interfaces were more than just controls. They were teaching tools. By requiring users to physically manipulate objects and create meaningful arrangements, the system ensured that anyone learning to operate human technology would also absorb something of human philosophy and values. "We need to report this to the Galactic Council," Zexai said eventually, though he felt reluctant to share their discovery. "The implications are staggering. If we can understand and adapt human interface design principles, it could revolutionize how we interact with complex systems." But Moldrak raised a tentacle in caution. "Captain, I'm not sure we should reveal everything we've learned. The humans clearly intended this ship for those who could appreciate their approach. If we turn it over to bureaucrats and researchers who only care about extracting military or commercial advantages, we might destroy something irreplaceable." It was a valid concern. The human approach to technology seemed to require a certain mindset, a willingness to embrace play and imagination as legitimate tools for understanding complex systems. Most galactic governments were unlikely to appreciate such concepts. "Perhaps we should try to contact them directly," suggested Yilna. "The ship's navigation systems show routes to human territories beyond the galactic rim. Maybe they're expecting someone to follow." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. A journey beyond the known galaxy would be incredibly dangerous, requiring resources and preparation far beyond what their small crew could manage. But the potential rewards were immense. First contact with humanity after 3 millennia of absence could reshape galactic civilization. As they debated their options, the ship's AI continued to reveal new wonders. Hidden throughout the vessel were workshops where human crew members had created their collections, libraries containing thousands of stories and cultural artifacts, and recreational facilities designed around games and activities that integrated seamlessly with the ship's operational needs. Every discovery reinforced the same theme. Humans had refused to accept the traditional separation between work and play, function and beauty, logic and imagination. They had created a form of technology that was both highly advanced and deeply personal, capable of fostering genuine relationships between users and their tools. Look at this, Crevier called from a newly discovered section. She had found what appeared to be a classroom or training facility, filled with simulation equipment that used figurine interfaces to teach everything from basic navigation to advanced engineering concepts. They turned learning into play and play into learning. No wonder they were such innovative problem solvers. The training simulations were remarkable in their sophistication. Users could arrange figurines to represent different scenarios, and the holographic systems would respond by creating detailed, interactive environments for exploration and experimentation. It was like having access to an infinite library of educational games, each one designed to teach important concepts while remaining engaging and enjoyable. We could spend years here just learning from their teaching systems, Moldrak observed. But I think that might be exactly what the humans intended. This ship isn't just a vehicle, it's a school. The implications were staggering. If the humans had left multiple ships like the Eternal Wanderer throughout the galaxy, they had essentially created a distributed education system, patiently waiting for other species to discover and learn from their approach. It was a form of cultural seeding on a galactic scale. But their peaceful exploration was interrupted by an urgent alarm from the swift current. Yilnar rushed to the communication station, her scales shifting to alarmed purple as she processed the incoming data. "Captain, we have company," she reported. 3 ships just dropped out of warp nearby. Configuration suggests they're salvage operators, probably attracted by our energy signatures. Salvage operators were a particular hazard in the neutral zone. These independent crews made their living by claiming and stripping valuable technology from derelicts and abandoned vessels. They operated in legal gray areas and weren't known for their diplomatic approach to competing claims. "Are they hostile?" Zexai asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "They're powering up scanning arrays and weapons systems," Yilna confirmed. "Standard salvage protocol. They're going to demand we surrender our claim to the derelict or face the consequences." Zexai felt his mandibles click in frustration. After everything they discovered, the thought of losing the Eternal Wanderer to common scavengers was infuriating. But their own ship was small and lightly armed, while the salvagers appeared to be operating military-grade vessels. "Can we activate the Wanderer's defensive systems?" he asked Moldrak. The engineer was already working at the figurine interfaces, arranging what appeared to be warrior figurines in defensive formations around miniature representations of the ship. "The AI is responding," he reported, "but the weapons systems require more complex authentication protocols. I need time to understand the control sequences." Time they didn't have. The salvage ships were approaching rapidly, and their initial communications made it clear they weren't interested in negotiation. In their view, the Eternal Wanderer was simply another derelict to be claimed, stripped, and sold to the highest bidder. But as the first salvage ship began its docking approach, something unexpected happened. The Eternal Wanderer's hull began to change color, shifting through patterns that seemed to pulse with inner light. The effect was beautiful, but also somehow ominous, like a warning display from some massive predator. "Captain," Moldrak called, his voice filled with excitement and alarm. "The ship's defense systems are activating automatically." It's as if the AI recognizes a threat to its collections. The lead salvage ships suddenly, found its docking clamps unable to secure a grip on the Wanderer's shifting hull. More concerning, their scanning beams began reflecting back at unusual angles, creating feedback loops that overloaded their sensor systems. Warning, unknown vessel. Came a transmission from the salvage ship. Cease defensive actions immediately or we will open fire. But the Eternal Wanderer was just getting started. As Zexhai watched in amazement, the ancient ship began to demonstrate why humans had been so successful in their brief galactic presence. The ship's response wasn't just defensive. It was creative, unexpected, and utterly alien to conventional military thinking. Instead of raising shields or charging weapons, it began to play. The Eternal Wanderer's response to the salvage threat was unlike anything in Captain Zexhai's considerable military experience. Instead of conventional defensive measures, the ancient ship began what could only be described as a performance. Holographic projections erupted from the vessel's hull, creating a three-dimensional light show that filled the space around both ships. But these weren't random displays of color and pattern. They were scenes from human mythology and entertainment played out on a cosmic scale using projections that dwarfed the attacking vessels. "What are they doing?" demanded the lead salvager over the communication channel, his voice a mixture of confusion and growing alarm. Zexhai watched in fascination as giant holographic warriors began battling enormous monsters in the space between the ships. The projections were so detailed and lifelike that they created the illusion of actual titans clashing among the stars. More importantly, the light show was interfering with the salvagers' targeting systems, making it impossible for them to achieve weapons lock. "It's using entertainment as camouflage," Chief Engineer Moldrak observed, his tentacles dancing over the figurine interface as he tried to understand the ship's defensive protocols. The AI is treating this like a game, but the game is actually an incredibly sophisticated defensive system. The holographic battle expanded, incorporating elements that seemed to respond to the salvagers' movements and positions. When one of their ships tried to maneuver around the light show, the projected warriors shifted their battle to block the approach. When another vessel attempted to use high-intensity scanners to penetrate the display, the holograms adapted by becoming even brighter and more chaotic. "This is impossible," muttered Lieutenant Crevier, her scales cycling through confused patterns of color. "How can a defensive system be so playful?" But the Eternal Wanderer was far from finished demonstrating human ingenuity. As the salvagers grew more frustrated and aggressive, the ship began to incorporate their own vessels into the holographic narrative. Suddenly, the three salvage ships found themselves cast as villains in an epic space opera, complete with dramatic music that somehow transmitted directly through their communication systems. "Turn off this ridiculous display immediately," ordered the salvage captain, but his demand only seemed to inspire the AI to greater creative heights. The holographic story adapted, making his ship the central antagonist in a tale of heroic resistance against tyrannical oppression. "Captain," Yilna reported from the communication station, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup throughout the Wanderer's hull. Whatever this system is, it's drawing power from sources I can't identify." Zexhai was beginning to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic warfare. The humans hadn't just built a defensive system. They had created something that weaponized creativity itself. The salvagers were being defeated not by superior firepower, but by sheer imaginative force. The holographic battle reached its climax as the projected warriors achieved victory over their monstrous opponents. But instead of simply ending, the display transformed into something even more remarkable. The space around the ships filled with what appeared to be a vast playground, complete with swings, slides, and climbing structures that dwarfed most space stations. "It's inviting us to play," Moldrak realized, his voice filled with wonder. "The defensive system has concluded that we're not a threat, so it's offering to engage us in recreational activities instead of combat." The salvagers, however, were having none of it. Frustrated by their inability to penetrate the Wanderer's defenses They opened fire with plasma cannons, sending destructive energy beams toward the ancient vessel. The ship's response was immediate and educational. The incoming energy beams struck what appeared to be giant holographic mirrors, reflecting back toward their sources with perfect accuracy. But the reflected beams weren't destructive. They had been converted into spectacular light shows that painted beautiful patterns across the attacking ship's hulls. It's teaching them that aggression can be transformed into art. The lesson wasn't lost on the salvagers. Their own weapons fire was being turned into a cosmic art installation that made their ships the centerpiece of a beautiful but entirely non-threatening display. It was impossible to maintain aggressive intent when your attacks were being converted into public art. "This is insane," came another transmission from the lead salvager. "We're not equipped to deal with whatever this is." But the Eternal Wanderer had one more surprise in store. The massive holographic playground began to populate with figures that were clearly meant to represent the salvage crews themselves. Cartoon versions of their species appeared on the cosmic swings and slides, having what looked like tremendous fun while their real counterparts remained trapped in their increasingly ineffective warships. "It's showing them what they could be doing instead of fighting," Crevier observed. "The system is trying to convince them that play is more rewarding than aggression." The psychological impact was profound. Watching idealized versions of themselves enjoying peaceful recreation while their real selves remained locked in pointless hostility created a cognitive dissonance that was impossible to ignore. The salvagers' communications became increasingly uncertain as they struggled to process what they were experiencing. Finally, the lead salvager made a decision that surprised everyone. "Unknown vessel," he transmitted. We formally withdraw our salvage claim. This technology is clearly beyond our understanding or ability to handle safely." The holographic playground immediately exploded into what could only be described as a celebration. Fireworks filled the space between the ships, spelling out messages of friendship and welcome in a dozen different languages. The cosmic party was so infectious that even Zexhai found himself clicking his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. "They're leaving," Yilnar reported as the salvage ships began to withdraw. "All three vessels are moving to a safe distance and powering down their weapon systems." As the immediate threat receded, the Eternal Wanderer's defensive displays gradually faded, leaving only normal space and the gentle glow of distant stars. But the demonstration had left a profound impact on everyone who witnessed it. "Captain," Moldrak said slowly, "I don't think we truly understand what we've found here. This isn't just a ship with unusual interfaces. This is evidence of an entirely different approach to existence itself." Zexai nodded, still processing what they had experienced. The humans hadn't just built advanced technology. They had created systems that embodied their fundamental beliefs about the nature of conflict, creativity, and cooperation. The Eternal Wanderer didn't just defend itself. It tried to transform its attackers into friends through the power of shared play. "We need to understand more," he decided. "The ship's AI has been patient with us, but I think it's time we made a real effort to learn what the humans intended to teach." Over the following days, they threw themselves into studying the ship's educational systems with renewed dedication. The AI responded to their increased engagement by revealing new layers of complexity and sophistication in its teaching methods. Every lesson built upon the previous one, gradually introducing them to concepts that went far beyond simple technology operation. They learned that the humans had developed their figurine interface systems as a response to what they called automation isolation syndrome. As their technology became more sophisticated, they recognized the danger of becoming disconnected from their tools and systems. The toy-based interfaces ensured that using their technology remained a fundamentally human experience, requiring creativity, intuition, and personal engagement. "It's brilliant," Crevier said as she worked through a particularly complex engineering simulation that used miniature construction vehicles to teach advanced structural design principles. They solved the problem of technological alienation by making their tools more like toys and their toys more like tools. The integration went even deeper than they had initially realized. The ship's AI had been designed not just to respond to figurine arrangements, but to learn from them. Every interaction taught the system something new about its users' preferences, capabilities, and creative potential. In return, the AI gradually adapted its responses to better match each individual's learning style and interests. The ship is becoming more like us the longer we're here, Moldrak observed. But we're also becoming more like humans in how we approach problems. The interface doesn't just let us control the ship. It changes how we think about control itself. This mutual adaptation was perhaps the most remarkable aspect of human technology. Rather than imposing rigid operational protocols, their systems encouraged organic development of relationships between users and tools. The Eternal Wanderer wasn't just a ship. It was a partner in exploration and discovery. But their studies were interrupted by an unexpected development. The ship's long-range sensors detected something approaching from the direction of the galactic rim. The contact was still days away, but its energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. "It's massive," Yilna reported, her 6 eyes widening as she studied the sensor displays. "Larger than anything in the current galactic fleet registries. And the propulsion system." She paused, checking her readings again. "It's not using conventional warp drive technology." The approaching vessel's energy patterns were strangely familiar, though. As Moldrak compared the readings with the Eternal Wanderer's systems, a startling possibility emerged. "Captain," he said, his voice filled with excitement and apprehension, "I think we're about to have visitors. Human visitors." The ship's AI seemed to confirm this assessment, as displays throughout the vessel began showing celebratory arrangements of figurines. The system was clearly anticipating the arrival of its creators with something that looked remarkably like joy. "After 3,000 years, Zexheim murmured, the humans are coming home." But as they waited for the approaching vessel to arrive, questions multiplied. Why were the humans returning now? What had they found in their explorations beyond the galactic rim? And, perhaps most importantly, how would they react to finding alien species learning to use their technology? The answers would come soon enough. In the meantime, they continued their studies, knowing that their understanding of human methods might be crucial in the coming encounter. The toy collection that had seemed so puzzling when they first boarded the ship had become their key to understanding an entirely different way of thinking about technology, conflict, and cooperation. As Captain Zexhai arranged a group of figurines according to patterns he was beginning to understand intuitively, he reflected on how much they had all changed during their time aboard the Eternal Wanderer. They had come seeking escape from their enemies, but they had found something far more valuable: a new way of seeing the universe itself. The approaching human ship would bring challenges and opportunities they could hardly imagine. But thanks to their education in the art of play, they would meet those challenges with tools they never knew they possessed: creativity, wonder, and the uniquely human understanding that the most serious problems often required the most playful solutions. The stars stretched endlessly around them, and somewhere among them, humanity was coming home to check on the gifts they had left behind. The greatest adventure was just beginning. The human ship that emerged from the depths of space 3 days later defied every conventional understanding of starship design that Captain Zexhai possessed. Where most vessels followed predictable patterns of form and function, this craft appeared to have been grown rather than built, its organic curves and flowing lines suggesting something alive rather than merely mechanical. "It's beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Crevier, her scales shifting to odd gold as she studied the approaching vessel through the Eternal Wanderer's enhanced sensors. The ship was indeed magnificent, stretching nearly twice the length of their ancient host vessel, but somehow giving the impression of delicate grace rather than overwhelming bulk. Its hull seemed to shimmer with inner light, creating patterns that reminded Zexhai of the holographic displays they had witnessed during the Salvager encounter. "Captain," Chief Engineer Moldrak reported from the figurine interface station, his tentacles moving in practice patterns among the arranged toys. The Wanderer's AI is responding to the new arrival. It's excited. I've never seen the system display this level of emotional reaction before. Throughout the ancient ship, displays were activating that they had never seen before. Holographic banners appeared in the corridors, showing celebratory messages in the flowing script of human writing. The figurine collections began rearranging themselves automatically, creating elaborate welcome displays that incorporated thousands of individual pieces in complex, joyful patterns. Incoming transmission, Navigator Yilna announced, her 6 eyes wide with anticipation. Audio and visual, but the format is unlike anything in our communication protocols. Put it through, Zexhai ordered, though he felt his mandibles clicking nervously as he prepared for humanity's first direct contact with galactic civilization in over 3 millennia. The transmission that filled their screens was not what any of them had expected. Instead of a formal diplomatic greeting or military challenge, they found themselves looking at what appeared to be a human child, perhaps 8 or 9 years old by their species standards, sitting cross-legged on a colorful mat surrounded by toys that were clearly related to the figurine collections aboard the Eternal Wanderer. "Hi there," the child said cheerfully, waving at the screen with the unself-conscious enthusiasm that seemed to be characteristic of young humans. "I'm Maya Chinoka IV, and I'm the current speaker for the exploration ship Joyful Discovery. We got the signal that someone found one of our way station ships. That's so exciting." Zexhai stared at the screen in stunned silence. After days of preparing for a momentous first contact scenario, he was faced with a human child who seemed to regard their presence as nothing more than an interesting development in what appeared to be an ongoing game. He finally managed, "Greetings, Speaker Maya. I am Captain Zexhai of the Veltar exploration vessel Swift Current. We have indeed discovered your vessel, the Eternal Wanderer, and we are honored to make contact with your people after so many years." Maya's face lit up with delight. "Oh wow, you learned to use the collection interface. That's amazing. Most species give up after the first few tries because they think it's too silly or complicated. But you figured it out. That means you're probably really creative and open-minded." Behind the child, Zexhai could see other humans moving about what appeared to be a casual living space rather than a formal bridge or command center. Adults of various ages were engaged in activities that looked more like an extended family gathering than the operation of an interstellar vessel. "Maya," came a gentle voice from off-screen. "Perhaps you should explain about our return first, before we get into the technical details." The child nodded seriously, her expression becoming more focused as she addressed the camera directly. "Right. So we've been exploring beyond a galactic rim for about 3,000 years now, and we've learned so many incredible things. But we always planned to come back and check on the way station ships we left behind. This is actually our first stop on the return journey." "You've been gone for 3,000 years, Zexhai said slowly, trying to process the implications. "But you appear to be quite young." Maya giggled, a sound that somehow conveyed both innocence and ancient wisdom. "Oh, I'm only 12, but that's an extended years. My biological age is actually about 8 by pre-expansion standards. We've learned a lot about life extension during our travels, but we've also learned that maintaining childlike wonder is one of the most important things for long-term space exploration." An adult human stepped into view, a woman with graying hair and kind eyes who moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to command. "Captain Zexhai," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Chinoka IV, Maya's parent, and the current expedition leader of the Joyful Discovery. We're delighted to meet you and learn that our way station system has been discovered by such a receptive species." "Your way station system," Zexhai repeated. "You left the Eternal Wanderer here deliberately?" "Of course," Maya interjected before her parent could respond. "We knew that eventually other species would develop the curiosity and creativity necessary to understand our collection interfaces. The way station ships were designed to serve as introduction points for anyone ready to learn about human approaches to technology and exploration." Dr. Chinoka IV nodded approvingly at her daughter's explanation. The humans you might have read about in your historical records were essentially our first expedition beyond our home system. We made contact with numerous galactic civilizations, learned what we could from them, and then continued outward to explore regions that others considered too dangerous or distant to investigate. But why the toy-based interfaces? Asked Moldrak, unable to contain his professional curiosity. Why not use more conventional control systems? Maya's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she began pulling various figurines and toys into view. Because conventional systems are boring, and, more importantly, they don't help you think creatively about problems. When you have to arrange actual physical objects to control your ship, you engage different parts of your brain. You start thinking about relationships, patterns, and stories instead of just pushing buttons. It also ensures that our technology remains accessible to children, added Dr. Chinokafor. We discovered during our early explorations that maintaining childlike perspectives is crucial for successful long-term space travel. Adults tend to become rigid in their thinking, while children remain open to new possibilities. The implications of this philosophy were staggering. As Zexai looked around at his crew, he realized that their time aboard the Eternal Wanderer had indeed changed them in fundamental ways. They approached problems more creatively now, looked for unconventional solutions, and found joy in the process of discovery itself. We would like to invite you aboard the Joyful Discovery, Dr. Chin Okafor continued. We have much to share about what we've learned in our travels, and we're eager to understand how galactic civilization has developed during our absence. The invitation was both thrilling and terrifying. Zexai's crew had come so far from their original mission of simple survival, but the opportunity to explore human space and learn directly from humanity's greatest explorers was irresistible. "We accept your invitation," he said formally, then added with a clicking sound that passed for laughter among his species, "though I suspect we'll need to bring some of our newly acquired toy collection to feel comfortable in your environment." Maya clapped her hands in delight. "Oh yes, please bring your favorite figurines. We'll want to see how you've personalized the collection interface. Every species that learns our system adds their own creative touches, and that's the best part." The transfer to the human ship was accomplished through technology that seemed more like magic than engineering. Instead of conventional docking procedures, the Joyful Discovery simply extended what appeared to be a soap bubble that expanded to encompass both vessels, creating a safe transit space that somehow maintained atmosphere and gravity throughout. "Transportation bubbles," Maya explained as she led them through the transfer chamber. "We developed them after realizing that traditional airlocks were really inefficient and kind of scary for most species. This way, moving between ships feels more like walking from one room to another." The interior of the Joyful Discovery was even more remarkable than its exterior. Every surface seemed to be alive with gentle movement and changing colors, responding to the presence and emotional states of its occupants. But more than that, the entire ship appeared to be one vast playground, with recreational activities seamlessly integrated into functional systems. "This is our main social space," Dr. Chinokafor explained, gesturing to an enormous chamber filled with what appeared to be the galaxy's most elaborate play area. Humans of all ages were engaged in activities that ranged from simple games to complex collaborative projects. But Zexai noticed that every activity seemed to serve some functional purpose for the ship's operation. "The children playing with building blocks over there are actually designing modifications to our life support systems," Maya pointed out, following his gaze. "And that group playing the strategy game is working out solutions to some navigation problems we encountered in the Whirlpool Nebula." It was the ultimate expression of the philosophy they had encountered aboard the Eternal Wanderer, the complete integration of work and play, function and fun, serious purpose, and joyful expression. The humans had created a society where productivity and happiness were not competing goals, but complementary aspects of the same fundamental approach to existence. "How many of your people are involved in this exploration?" asked Yilna, clearly overwhelmed by the scale and complexity of what she was witnessing. Currently, There are about 50,000 humans aboard the joyful Discovery, Dr. Chinokafor replied casually, as if this were a perfectly normal population for a single starship. We've been growing our community during the expedition, both through normal reproduction and by extending lifespans as we've learned new techniques. The scale was almost incomprehensible. The ship was essentially a mobile civilization, a self-sustaining society that had spent 3 millennia exploring the most remote regions of the universe while maintaining their essential humanity through play, creativity, and wonder. "What did you find out there?" Zexhai asked, gesturing toward the galactic rim visible through the ship's transparent walls. Maya's expression became serious, showing a maturity that seemed far beyond her apparent years. "We found that the universe is much more alive than anyone imagined," she said quietly. "There are forms of consciousness and intelligence that exist on scales we never dreamed possible. Some are so large that entire galaxies are just thoughts in their minds. Others are so small that they live in the spaces between atoms. But the most important thing we learned," added Dr. Chinokafor, "is that consciousness seems to be drawn to play. Every form of intelligence we encountered, no matter how alien, showed some form of creative, non-survival-oriented behavior that could only be described as play. This revelation tied together everything they had experienced aboard the Eternal Wanderer. The humans hadn't just developed their toy-based technology as a quirky cultural preference. They had discovered something fundamental about the nature of intelligence itself. That's why our collection interfaces work so well," Maya explained, pulling out a figurine that seemed to shift and change as she handled it. "Play is a universal language. When you engage with our systems through play, you're accessing something that connects all conscious beings. The implications for galactic civilization were profound. If the humans were correct about the fundamental importance of play and consciousness, then their approach to technology and society offered a path toward forms of cooperation and understanding that had never been achieved before. We have an invitation for you," Dr. Chinokafor said as their tour continued. "We're planning to establish a new way station in the galactic core where the concentration of civilizations is highest. We'd like your species to be our first partners in creating a truly integrated playground for galactic consciousness." The offer was staggering in its scope and implications. To work directly with humanity in creating new forms of interspecies cooperation, to help spread their revolutionary approach to technology and society throughout the galaxy, to participate in what might be the next great leap forward in galactic evolution. "What would such a partnership involve?" Zexhai asked, though he was already certain of his answer. Maya grinned, her expression radiating the kind of infectious enthusiasm that made it impossible to resist joining in her games. "We teach you everything we've learned about consciousness, creativity, and the universe beyond the rim," she said. "And you teach us what we missed while we were gone. Together, we turn the whole galaxy into the biggest, most amazing playground anyone has ever imagined." As Zexhai looked around at his crew, he saw the same excitement and determination reflected in their faces that he felt building within himself. They had started this journey as refugees fleeing superior enemies, but they were ending it as pioneers preparing to help reshape galactic civilization itself. "On behalf of my crew and my species," he said formally, "we accept your partnership. Though I suspect," he added with his species equivalent of smile, "that we're going to need a lot more toys." The laughter that filled the joyful Discovery was proof that some things truly were universal. In a galaxy filled with ancient conflicts and rigid thinking, humanity had returned with the most powerful force of all, the simple, transformative power of play. And the greatest game in galactic history was just beginning.